Hi everyone, welcome to our 47th video session. We're joined here today with Michaela Sullivan, and we're going to be speaking a little bit about food waste and reduction. But before we get started with this call, let's go through introductions and introducing the purpose of video sessions in the first place. So video sessions hosted by Impaction are a way for us to be able to collaborate and hear stories from social entrepreneurs around the world. We invite our community members to join and to ask questions to these entrepreneurs as well. So we're always speaking to inspirational people, and we want our community members to be a part of that journey. So yeah, ultimately, that's a little bit about Impaction, the video sessions in particular. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves in 2 sentences or less, so you know who's on the call. So I'm Shivani. I'm the CEO of Impaction, and I'm based here in Chicago, Illinois. Dan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Daniel Heiniger. I'm also based here in Chicago. I am the Impaction Outreach and Engagement Coordinator.
Thank you. All right, Syed, do you want to go next?
Okay, yes, this is me, Sayyid Saudwasim from Pakistan, and I'm serving as the Vice Chairman of the SAMS Pakistan. It's basically a consultation and training firm. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Of course.
Yay.
Hi, I'm Sam. I work with 2 very wonderful organizations called Virtually United and Birdwell Solutions, and I'm very excited about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. It's good seeing you. All right, Michaela, I'm going to introduce you, and then I'll let you take it away. But yes, thank you everyone for joining. So today we're learning about reducing food waste via solar food dehydrators from Michaela Sullivan. Michaela is an entrepreneur on a global mission and a selfless drive and determination to help those who lack basic necessities in life. After traveling to over 20 countries and witnessing similar problems with food insecurity, she co-founded KinoSol, a social good startup focused on decreasing food waste via solar food dehydrators and educational programs. Over the past 5 years, she has grown KinoSol's team and impact while working to inspire other entrepreneurs to address global problems and assist them on their journey. So Michaela, I'll let you take it away, and you can feel free to share your screen.
Perfect. Let me just pull this up. Should be good to go. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Just making sure I'm doing it right. Yeah, so thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me here, Shivani. Super excited to kind of share the work we've been doing at KinoSol and honestly just answer questions and have a discussion around food waste in general and, what are your guys' ideas for tackling this global challenge. So I guess we'll go ahead and just jump right into it and start with some of the statistics around food waste. So around the world, 1/3 of the food we produce goes to waste, and that is about 1.3 billion tons of food that is just getting wasted every year. And that's equivalent to about $2.6 trillion in food going to waste. So there's a huge economic burden of food waste, not to mention the environmental impacts and greenhouse gas emissions. And so when we were looking at this issue, we decided to specifically focus on smallholder farmers. And around the world, there's about 1.5 billion smallholder farmers. And so we classify smallholder farmers as, farmers who have 1 to 2 hectares of land and are really reliant on everything they're producing to support their family. And so what we found is for these smallholder farmers, about 83% of the food that's going to waste results in the step basically from farm to market. So in the production, harvesting and handling, storage, processing that food, where it's different than, the food waste we may see here in the United States or in more developed countries where food waste is occurring on the consumer level. So when we started looking at how to address food waste, we were thinking that the most impactful place we could have an impact on this problem is really for smallholder farmers where it's happening on the producer level instead of the consumer level. And so when we were looking at ways that smallholder farmers are preserving food or trying to increase the shelf life of it, a common practice is dehydration. Although for many of these smallholder farmers, they're typically only drying grains and beans. But we decided to specifically focus on more perishable crops like fruits and vegetables. And so we took this concept and technology around dehydration and used it as a way for them to preserve fruits and vegetables. So we started actually back in 2014 with the Thought for Food Challenge. So it was a global challenge focused on how do we feed our growing population. And that's kind of where we got our start in this entrepreneurial journey that is KinoSol. So from there, we spent a lot of time prototyping and really just trying to understand how do we modify this technology, taking it from, you know, open air drying to something that could be more efficient, could actually reduce the amount of bacteria, microbial growth, and be something that's really easy to use. And so then after we prototyped, we got our product out there. We knew it was important to talk to a lot of the end users to really understand the challenges they faced around food preservation, around food losses, and understand how we could make this technology as applicable as possible. So we were able to get our product into over 40 countries and collect a lot of really great field data in terms of, you know, how does it work in different environments? What sort of cultural barriers are there? What types of products are being dried across different ecosystems? And we talked to over 250 smallholder farmers just to understand, you know, how would they actually use this technology? What benefits could they derive from it? And we continued from there. And so in 2018, we commercially launched our product, our food dehydrator. So it uses only the sun. So it's super simple, very low tech. And we kept it that way because we knew most of the communities we were working with were going to be in more rural locations. So having something that was high tech was not feasible. It was going to have to travel quite a long distance. But we wanted to improve the process of air drying. So typically when you air dry something, like you saw on the previous slide where you just lay it out in the open air, you end up losing a significant portion of what you're drying due to environmental constraints. So if it rains or pests getting into it, there's contaminants. And so we were able to modify that and have it be fully enclosed so that you're able to preserve 100% of what you're drying and you're not losing it due to pests, environment, that kind of thing. So super easy to put together. There's no tools required for assembly. Everything kind of disassembles in flat packs. And then from there, we partner with different organizations, specifically in country, nonprofits, women's groups, different cooperatives, and we work with them to conduct trainings all around food preservation, how to use the dehydrators, and then we also incorporate some basic business training so that they can use the technology as an income generation tool. We found that as we kind of work within different communities, there are different cultural aspects that we need to incorporate, different educational materials we need to cover in order to increase the implementation and the success of these community members using the dehydrators. So we've specifically focused our work over in Eastern Africa. So most of our partnerships are in Uganda, and we've done some pilot projects in Tanzania as well. Definitely taking more of a community by community approach, trying to ensure that the sustainability of the technology and the work that we're doing is there, instead of trying to take kind of a wide approach and get a few dehydrators across 40 different countries. We realize we can have a greater impact and more sustainable impact by focusing in on 1 or 2 communities and scaling out from there. So to date, we've been able to work with over 5,000 smallholder farmers and help them become more food secure, help them increase their annual income from selling the dried outputs at local markets. And in total, we've been able to preserve over 680,000 pounds of food that would have otherwise just sat in the fields and gone to waste or been lost kind of along that process of getting the food from the farm to the consumer. And so our goal when we started KinoSol was, how can we reach 1 million people? We felt like that was a good goal to set, and we would have made kind of a dent in this global food problem. And so what we realized we've had to do is continue to expand the programs that we offer and how can we expand our impact. And so to do that, we realized that we needed to focus not only on the communities that we're working with and helping in implementing this technology, but we needed to get other people involved in our mission and make them aware of these issues. Because I think here in the US, it's very easy for us to not really think about food waste as a problem. You know, we just go to the grocery store and we refill our refrigerator. But as we start educating others about these global issues, then they can be inspired and start thinking about what they can do to address these issues, whether it be on the consumer side or the producer side or in their own local communities. So last year we launched our social impact trips. So we partner with colleges and universities, taking groups of students over to Uganda to work with our team there, to work with our partners, and start to understand, you know, what does food waste look like for smallholder farmers, and learn about entrepreneurship and learn about starting a business. So the students typically are business students, and they serve as business consultants. So we work with kind of a various group of people. So they're not only learning about food waste and helping us with the community trainings that we do, but they also work with some of our other partners on different projects. So whether it be working with women's groups and helping them think through, you know, how do I increase the sales of the handicrafts I'm producing, that then supports sending young females to higher education, or learning about water purification and implementing water projects in different communities. So we're trying to show them that there's these global issues, and while they may not be as present in our local communities here in the Midwest or across the US, they are problems that need to be addressed, and that entrepreneurship and business is a tool that can be used to tackle some of these challenges. And it's all kind of about creating ideas, coming up with simple solutions that could be implemented, and working within local communities and the infrastructure there to implement these solutions. So we had been doing all of this, and then, as all of us are aware, you know, COVID hit kind of early this year. And so we've had to put a lot of our travel plans kind of on pause. And so we've had to pivot a little bit and take a lot of the entrepreneurship training we're doing with colleges and universities to a digital platform. So we launched a new initiative called Launch Impact, which is all focused on helping anyone really wanting to solve a problem, social entrepreneurs, gain the skills they need to go from, you know, identifying problems, creating that solution, to really scaling that impact. So we've got our first few courses out. The first one's out. The next one will be coming out soon. So it's really learning about how do you tackle these problems, whether it be, you know, a problem you see in your local community or a problem as big as food insecurity, and going through the process and the steps to start thinking about potential solutions and how do you implement them. So that's kind of what we've been doing to scale our impact. We realized, you know, it's not going to take just our idea of a solar food dehydrator to solve all of the food insecurity challenges around the globe. Food insecurity affects different communities in different ways, and so it's going to take a multitude of solutions to really make a dent in this challenge. And so by getting others involved in this mission, educating them and helping them think through how do they tackle it in their own community, will be one step closer to really helping reach that 1 million people that are positively impacted and helping them become more food secure. So that's kind of all I've got. I'm happy to answer any questions about KinoSol. Also happy to just have a discussion around, you know, different challenges of food insecurity in different communities, or ideas that you guys have for addressing food insecurity. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michaela. This was fantastic. And I have a question just to start off. Why did you all start in Uganda in particular? Why was East Africa a focus for y'all?
Yeah, so we really focused in on East Africa because of the local partners and relationships we had built there. So a couple of the co-founders had done internships there. We had some really great local traction from local partners really buying into the need for this technology and helping us implement it. And then because the technology doesn't use any electricity, doesn't have any solar panels, it really works best kind of along that equatorial temperature where it's really warm, really sunny kind of most of the year. So the climate was pretty ideal for implementing the technology. And then it really kind of came down to the infrastructure we were building on the ground with local partners.
That makes sense. And are you looking to grow to other areas in just East Africa, or are you looking to grow, or over to the West or in other places?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely always open to partnering with different organizations and expanding the impact. So we'll not really ever say no to looking at new partners or new locations. We did spend some time kind of over the past year working on improving the dehydrator so it works in slightly cooler environments. So it is available for anyone here in the US that wants to purchase it and kind of tackle some of that consumer food waste at the home level. And that kind of just supports the work that we're doing in Eastern Africa. But I do think over the next, 5 to 10 years, we'll continue to expand out to different communities, whether it be in Uganda or in, Tanzania or maybe South America or Asia. Yeah, see.
Solid. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few actually. Thank you so much for your presentation. I really liked the consideration that you all had with the cost and the maintenance, and it seems like being able to ship and everything just kind of looks like it just pieces together. You don't need any tools. I think that was really great. I have a couple questions, like one for your, the cost of them. I mean, I'm sure it's pretty low cost, and you're considering the geography of where things are at, because you need a lot of sun for it since it's not using electric. But I'm wondering if, because I'm thinking ahead, like other partnerships you'd have. I'm thinking here of Chicago specifically. There's a lot of food insecurity because of the access to healthy foods right here on the west and south sides of Chicago. And I'm looking at, big wholesalers, big food distributors, and other things here in Chicago being able to have something like that, because their food does go to waste. Like, I have a good friend that has a huge vegetable and fruit distribution center. But anyways, I'm wondering, are your things capable of being, hooked up to be utilize electricity for the Midwest here in the States? And if not, what would the cost be? And then it's two-part. The other thing is like sponsorships. Do you have like a sponsorship program where you can sponsor a farmer and things like that? Because I think that would be a really cool way to, get people involved.
Yeah, in terms of using the technology here in the US, it's definitely designed more for an individual user. So it's not necessarily your large scale producers. And that's something that I think we've always kind of run into. A lot of, bigger organizations, whether it be food banks or kind of larger farmers or distributors, are always looking for something that they can use as well, that is, bigger, is higher tech. And I think in order to address that need, what we've kind of taken the approach with is we've partnered with a couple of different organizations, specifically in Uganda, that have larger scale dehydrators. So not trying to reinvent the wheel, but really just cross collaborate. And so we've got that partnership built up with Sparky Dehydrators in Uganda, and they serve kind of more your mid to large scale producers. And so as we're looking at larger farmers, specifically in Uganda, that's kind of the solution and the approach we've taken. I think in order to address food insecurity for larger producers here in the US, we would definitely need to incorporate some type of technology, whether it be solar panels or electricity. And that just comes down to, capital costs and constraints of doing a lot of re-engineering work and scaling up the technology. And it's definitely not impossible. It just hasn't been our focus yet. But it could be, down the road, or if we found the right strategic partner who's already working on it, we would love to, collaborate with them and kind of cross promote the technology. In terms of sponsorship, yes, we do have it available on our website where anyone can sponsor a dehydrator. And then we work with our community partners to implement that technology. So we typically don't just give the technology out. We don't think just giving technology out is the right model, especially in a sustainable approach. So there's always some monetary exchange, whether it's just kind of a nominal exchange. Usually it's a very low cost, somewhere between $5 to $10 for the farmer, and then they have to go through the training program. just because we want them to also have some skin in the game, and we want them to place value on using the technology. But we do work with partners in a variety of ways, whether it be through subsidizing the cost of the dehydrators through grants, whether it be through our sponsorship program. We've also set up a microfinance fund that is available for people to utilize that to purchase the dehydrators. So we do try to kind of think through what are ways we can reduce the burden of getting this technology out there. So yes, long story short, yes.
Well, there was a lot of questions in what I asked you, so I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Does anyone have any other questions to ask?
I most certainly do. So could you go into a little bit? We've talked a lot about cost sustainability and things like that, but could we talk about a little bit about environmental sustainability and like what your product is actually like made out of, and like how the long term, like the lifespan of this product?
Yeah, so we use all food grade plastic. We have a manufacturer here in Iowa that helps us produce the technology. Based on the material, the technology has a lifespan of 5 to 7 years. And we haven't quite hit that point where we've had products out there that long to really know kind of if that is on point. So we'll kind of see that over the next coming years. I think the materials will last longer than that. It kind of just comes down to maintaining the use of the products. And what we've tried to do is, you know, if something does break, looking at what resources are available locally that could potentially subsidize and be used instead of what's being provided. So let's say, you know, a tray breaks, you can always use, you know, aluminum or chicken wire. While it may not work quite as well as the plastic trays we include, and you may have some more issues with sticking, there are options to kind of replace those broken parts. And what we found with a lot of the communities is not necessarily with our technology, but with other technology, they tend to be pretty resourceful and repurpose a lot of the parts that are being used. So if something does break, they find an alternative for it. In terms of more of the environmental impacts the technology has, because it's using a natural convection system and utilizing the sun, there's not a lot of, you know, CO2 emissions. And so we're helping to reduce that. You would find with other types of processing or the food just going to waste. So when food just sits in the field and goes to waste, it does produce a lot of CO2, which contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. So if we can provide a technology that creates an alternative, so instead of just letting it sit there and go to waste, but you can dehydrate it, extend the shelf life, store it for, you know, 6 to 8 months, sell it at market at a later point in time, you're able to also reduce those greenhouse gas emissions that would kind of just naturally happen without people really thinking about them.
I really like that. And I think that something that you brought up earlier that I thought was just probably one of my favorite parts about kind of the strategies that you guys have gone, and that is you're focusing on cultivating a culture in the community before you spread out and just have a bunch of different dehydrators all over the world. You're focused on one area and one community. And I'm not sure exactly what type of partners you have, but how are you guys maintaining a relationship with those communities over time so that, say, the next generation of farmers still have access to this and still think that it's the bee's knees, per se?
Yeah, so we've got 2 part-time staff members in Uganda that kind of help maintain a lot of those relationships. With our social impact trips, that's definitely increased our interactions with the community, not just necessarily in food preservation, but we want to be kind of that umbrella organization that's providing that support across the community. So even if it is just around, you know, business training, or we have people attend our trainings and they take something away that they can use, whether it be selling local fruit at the market or it might be a handicraft business, we think there's a lot of value in continuing to support the community as a whole instead of just kind of nichely focusing on food and agriculture. But a lot of our trainings focus around that cultural component. So we do a lot of taste testing. We do a lot of how do you repurpose this food kind of in your everyday diet and get used to using dried fruits and vegetables in your common cooking classes, or I mean your common cooking every day. So we do a lot of training around that. And so I think by taking kind of a more holistic approach, we're able to continue and strengthen those relationships with the community partners and just the community itself. And so I think that's really important, that there's a lot of community buy-in and they see the value in this because it's not just singularly focused, but we're taking more of that broad approach. And it's education that's going to continue to be passed down. So let's say a mother is using this technology to dry fruits and vegetables. The children are eating dried fruits as a snack at school. You're maybe selling some of it at the market or to your neighbor. And that education, we've had a lot of kids being super interested in, using this technology because it is really easy to use. So once you're kind of trained on how to use it, which I would say most of the training is focused on, what do you do with the dried outputs? What are the benefits of it? How do you use it as an income generation tool? It's not so much on how to use it because you simply just kind of cut your fruits and vegetables, place it on the tray and set it out in the sun. So we tried to keep it kind of as simple as possible. But yeah, I think taking that holistic approach strengthens those relationships and allows the community to have more buy-in. And we work with them on, whatever kind of challenges they're facing.
I really like that. Have you guys done a lot of testing on like how the retention has been and how of the folks who came to training and received these dehydrators, how many of them are actually going forward and using them and making sure and keeping that stock for 6 to 8 months?
Yeah, so we've done some work around measuring that impact, and what we found is a majority of the users are using the technology. The difference is just how often they're using it. So some of them are maybe using it once to twice a week. Some of them are using it every day. And so that kind of varies. And I think some of that has to do with maybe the level of training or kind of what else they're doing, whether it be, they're using it just as a tool to dry the extra fruits and vegetables they don't sell at the market that day. Or maybe they have a larger field, so they're using it every day because, all of their tomatoes came into season and it's really not economical for them to try to sell it at the market, but they can dry it instead. And so I think the retention has been really good, especially since we've incorporated more of that community training into it. When we started, we were really just kind of reliant on our partners to implement the technology, and we realized that really wasn't working. There had to be some sort of education and training incorporated into it. And that's allowed for it to be much more sustainable and allowed the retention rate and implementation rate to be much more successful.
Awesome. I'm glad that you guys have taken some time to look at what the community response has been on a longer term scale. And I'm assuming that you guys will continue to do so in cycles. So can you tell me a little bit about like the community partners themselves and like what exactly like the types of groups these are and who exactly like within these communities, like what role those organizations like function as within a community?
Definitely. So we've partnered with a couple of different communities across Uganda. And what we found is by working with kind of the community leaders, so whether it be, I guess it would be kind of comparable to like a mayor of a town. That's not exactly the term they use, but similar to that, or working with kind of prominent groups within the community. So one of the communities we work with, there's a very strong presence of a women's group, and they work with a lot of single mothers. They work to send young girls to high school to continue on their education. And so by working with groups that are invested in the success of that community, we found that to be kind of the most fruitful partners, as well as then just working with different smaller kind of grassroots organizations. So whether it be, a cooperative of smallholder farmers that maybe all sell coffee or produce coffee or, that is their main source of income, but then they also have fruits and vegetables that they're producing. Or whether it be kind of a local startup that is there to support the local community. We worked with kind of a wide variety across the board. So women's groups, kind of community leaders, leaders of different projects within the community. So one of the communities we're working with one of their main goals is to get a water project set up. So they've created a pump and a well, and they want at some point to have water in every household instead of them having to hike about a mile or so to go get water from the stream every day. We've also worked with different startup companies that are kind of in the same space. So one of our key partners, they produce vertical gardens and are focused more on urban farming. So we work with them kind of on collaboration to work in more of that urban setting to kind of educate your everyday consumer. In capital city is Kampala, and most of our work is kind of on the outskirts of that. And so by partnering with them, they're working on helping families in the community grow products, and then our product kind of meshes very nicely that once you grow it, then you can dehydrate it. We worked with different kind of schools looking at opportunities to implement the technology in different like school gardens or as an educational tool for kind of your, I would say kind of like middle school-esque age group. Yeah, so kind of a wide variety of partners. What we found is the most important thing is that they do have buy-in within the local community, and they're invested in the success of that community, and they built out those relationships. So we work with them, and then because they're already kind of ingrained within the community, we're able to better understand, you know, what does this community need? How can we continue to support them and help them? And then we really look at communities that identify food waste as an issue. We don't want to just take the product in there and drop it off, but we want them to be invested in wanting to solve this challenge where they're seeing a lot of food going to waste. And so they see value in bringing this technology in and having their community members learn how to use it. And so that's really what we look for in our partnerships.
That's really awesome. I think that's all the questions that I had at the moment. But thank you so much. That was a very thorough answer that not only hit on the question that I asked, but also the follow-up question I was going to ask. So awesome.
Good. Yeah.
Michaela, I wanted to learn, what are some of the surprising challenges that you faced in launching and even executing on your mission? Something that you didn't see coming?
Oh, that's a good question. I think we had a lot of kind of learning lessons along the way, both from how to actually build this technology. When we started, none of us were engineers, none of us were food scientists. So we really had no idea how we were going to build this or if it was even going to work. And so we had a lot of help from different faculty members, friends and families, woodworking shops, different local manufacturing partners. So that was definitely kind of a challenge and a surprise of like, hey, we actually did this. And I think as someone wanting to solve a problem, sometimes not knowing, I think is actually the best, where I think had we, you know, one of us maybe been an engineer, we would have been a little bit more constrained in that like engineering mindset, where because we weren't formally trained to be an engineer, we had a lot more kind of creative outside of the box thinking. I think some of the other challenges we've run into really is kind of learning how to build out a partnership network and really what to look for in partners. Shipping has always been kind of a interesting lesson learned, is how do you get your product over there? That's definitely been a challenge, and we've been fortunate enough to partner with different organizations that have kind of helped us figure that out along the way. I think overcoming some of those cultural barriers around, you know, educating people about eating dried products. While they're used to drying grains and beans, drying fruits and vegetables is something that is kind of a foreign concept for a lot of people. And so that's where we incorporated a lot of tasting, testing, cooking classes, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think those have all been kind of good learning lessons along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially because you're working so heavily with community members in the first place. My background is in international development. So when I was working at a nonprofit before, a lot of our members would go to these areas in East and Western Africa, ultimately being consultants. But when people from the West are going over to help people in the East, there's a little bit of pushback from the community, right? So is that something that you've experienced initially, and then you have people on your team who are already situated there, which helps the situation and alleviates this challenge a little bit? But have you faced that struggle at all?
I think there's definitely, that's definitely a challenge that we've had to overcome, and that's where our local staff has really been instrumental. I think by building out those partnerships with different organizations and having a local staff, it's helped overcome some of those kind of cultural barriers. And then just the approach that we take, as most of the times when we work with a new community, we spend time just going in and listening. And I think taking more of that approach of understanding, what challenges are you guys facing, instead of coming in as, hey, we know these are the challenges you're facing and here's how we're going to solve them. But we take a much more collaborative approach of, we want them to be invested in the solution and we want to support them along the way, because ultimately we don't want to be there 10 years down the road. We want things to be sustainable and we want them to become self-sufficient. And so I think that's always key. I as well have an international development background, and so I definitely understand I think a lot of people from the West have a very, their heart is in the right place, but understanding, what does this community need? You kind of just have to take a step back and remove yourself and realize that they really do have the solutions themselves. And you just need to kind of like that. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I like that you said that, and I like that you come in with that sense of awareness. I think a lot of people in international development, I don't know if you have experienced this, but there's a long way to go with that level of self-awareness. But yeah, absolutely. I like the consciousness that you have behind that. Does anyone have any other questions or comments or anything? Or Michaela, if you have a question for the community, you can also ask. It can be more of a conversation.
I think the only other thing that I would like to ask is, where can I stay up to date? How can I know where you guys, how things are going, and maybe get involved if my time allows it?
Yeah, so we're present on kind of all social media platforms. We also have a newsletter that we send out about once a month, just on, here's kind of what we've been up to, which is on our website. So Shivani, I can send you all of that information if you want to send it out afterwards. So yeah, we're always looking for anyone who's interested in helping. And, if there's anything we can do to help you guys, whether it be, you guys have an idea and you just need a sounding board and want to talk through it, happy to share kind of, here's how maybe we overcame this challenge. Or a lot of times I think as people start thinking about how do you solve a problem, a lot of those hurdles are very similar, regardless if it is in food and ag or whether it's in a completely different space. So always happy to give my time, help anyone who's kind of starting that social impact journey. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, so social media, huge. And ultimately, yeah, I think there's a way for us to help each other. There's always room for collaboration and social impact in particular. I love that Michaela said that in the first place, that it can be more of a symbiotic relationship. And I think Dan was about to add something before I cut him off.
No, it's all good. No, I really appreciate what you're doing. I love your approach. I love I love how you guys are just sitting back and listening. I love that you want to be present and then get out because you want them to lead. You want the communities to, invest and be self-sustained. And I really appreciate that. I am thinking of another video presenter who talked about food insecurities that was on 2-3 sessions ago.
Yep.
And just really wanting to make sure that as a community we're supporting you, that we have continued engagement, whether it's on the forum or just checking in over social media, seeing what you're doing, highlighting what you're up to, because Sam isn't the only one. I'm sure after listening to this video, there's going to be a lot of people. My mind's going 1,000 miles an hour thinking about, the whole upscale and need of what you guys are doing. And I know I'm getting away from things with my imagination, but I'm really hoping that our community sees this and sees how they can adapt here in the States. And a lot of the community garden network, especially here in Chicago, that I'm aware of and a part of. And I just, I just really hope that there's continued engagement moving forward. And we'd love to, hear back from you. I'll be following your newsletter, so I'll see the highlights. But I'm really hoping that you get the support, from us as well.
Of course. Yeah, super excited to be engaging with you guys, and I'm glad Mason made the introduction, Shivani. I think what
Absolutely.
you guys do is awesome, and I think as more people kind of look at social impact work and entrepreneurship and looking at how business can tackle some of these global challenges, having that community is so key. And whether it be helping each other through the struggles or being there to support each other when you do have big successes, I think that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a couple of connections, like Dan said, that are working in a similar sector as you, specifically with actually dehydrators. And I told you about AgriCycle before. I think you guys are already connected. There are 2 others in our network. So Dan and I will work to, connect you with them as well. But that sounds awesome. Guys, do you have any more questions before we wrap up?
I do not, but thank you so much for the presentation. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. It looks like we're getting to that time where we have to wrap up. It's been a great discussion. Michaela, thank you so much for hosting and for sharing your presentation. Be sure, we're going to, send out a survey afterwards. Be sure to fill out the survey just so, we hear some feedback on how the session went, how we can make it better. And check out our Instagram page at Humans Inspiring Impact. And this is where you'll get all of the news and the updates and, find people like Michaela and where we can highlight stories for people like Michaela on the Instagram page itself. And if you have anyone else who you think that would want to join some of these sessions, please feel free to refer them. We're just looking for, spreading positivity around the world, and especially during these times. So thank you so much. And I'm going to ask you guys to hold on for 5 minutes after the recording is over, just so we can hear your feedback right on the call. But thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see you next time for the next video session.